Diolch am ymuno ni yng nghanadledd Cenedlaethol Seren 2018. Ewch yn bellach. Thank you for joining us in the Seren National Conference 2018, Above and Beyond. Dyma sesiwn. This is session Estyn, y wybodaeth ddiweddaraf am Policy MAT. Estyn, MAT Policy Update.
Bore da bawb, mam ta Arnott dwi. Unfortunately, my Welsh isn't strong enough to continue in Welsh, so I hope you don't mind that I'll continue in English. Can I first thank you for the invitation to join today's Seren conference. Estyn was very pleased to be invited, and we welcome the opportunity to tell you a little bit about our work around more able and talented learners. Some of you know me in the audience, which is lovely to see. I have a background in schools education, but mostly in post-16 education, and I inspect both in the FE sector and in schools. Now, in terms of Estyn's work in this area, I'm going to present to you a little bit of information around our thematic work. We've recently published a thematic research study on A-level provision, both in schools and FE colleges. I shall also talk through our inspection framework. How many of you have been on peer inspector training? Excellent. And how many of you oversee A-level provision in colleges or sixth form provision in schools? Brilliant. So you might find the second part of this particularly interesting, because I'm going to go through the inspection guidance and give you a little bit of detail about the kinds of things that we look at. And then finally, I'm going to point you in the direction of some effective practice that we have published on our website. So this year, as I said earlier, we published our report evaluating A-levels in the sixth form and in FE colleges. The report evaluates standards, provision and leadership of A-levels in both schools and colleges. It considers a range of factors, such as standards at A-level and how they are measured, the quality of teaching and assessment, the nature of the A-level curriculum, the strategic leadership of sixth forms and A-level provision in colleges, and partnership working. We've also published a range of other thematic reports focusing on more able and talented learners, and I will point you in the direction of those later on through this presentation. Now, this report had a number of main findings, but what I'm going to share with you today are the specific findings in relation to more able and talented learners. I'm conscious that there's a lot of text on this slide, so I'm going to guide you through it, and then I'll pick up themes from this throughout the rest of the presentation. So between 2014 and 2016, there was a flatlining of A-level performance overall. Not only that, but there was also a decline in the proportion of pupils and learners achieving the highest grades, and Wales was probably the poorest performing region in the UK. However, outcomes at A-star and A in Wales improved in 2017 and 2018, which is really positive news. Some of you will know that it's very difficult to compare the performance of centres against each other because of the way that current performance is measured. But you'll also be aware that Welsh Government have recognised that this is a challenge and are working on some consistent performance measures so that we're able to compare performance of learners both in sixth formers and at colleges. Now, most centres, provision for more able learners is now focused around the Seren programme. What we found in our thematic survey was that learners are generally very positive about their experience of the programme. They enjoy meeting like-minded young people, and they enjoy having the opportunity to have additional sessions in areas that are of specific interest to them. Those aspiring to study a science-based subject at university, such as medicine or dentistry, have also really appreciated the additional support that the Seren programme has been able to provide them. So, for example, the support in applying to universities or taking specific examinations. A few centres have provision for more able learners that extends beyond the SEREN programme. These centres track carefully the progress of learners and provide challenging work and experiences that ensures that these learners achieve their full potential. For example, they include masterclasses such as and specialist lectures by guest speakers, or special interest clubs for high achieving learners. In these centres, they work in partnership with other providers, for example, to extend the provision. There are centres that work with universities to deliver further maths, for example. So, that brings us on to the core inspection framework. So there are some of you who are PI trained, so apologies to you if this isn't new to you, but given that we have a mixed audience, I'll talk a little bit about the framework. So the inspection framework covers 5 inspection areas. We look at standards, we look at well-being and attitudes of learners, teaching and learning experiences, care support and guidance, and leadership. The starting point for all inspections is the provider's own self-evaluation of their provision. In addition to that, an inspector will have about 4 days, 3 or 4 days to prepare for a lead inspection. I have one next week, so I'll spend the other 3 days this week preparing for that inspection. I will have looked at the performance information that I have available to me, a range of other statistical evidence that I have, and I will look in detail at the provider's self-evaluation. And a combination of that information will help me form some emerging questions. When we're looking specifically at more able and talented learners, the data may show that over time, the progress of these learners has been very, very strong. Or it may show that there's been a decline in performance over time. We would look to see what the provider says about that in its self-evaluation. And through that information, that may lead to a set of emerging questions which will help guide the team's work. So, for example, we might be asking, in either of those scenarios where trends are really positive or trends are declining, we might ask how well teaching and learning experiences challenge learners to make progress. We might ask how effectively more able and talented learners are identified and how effectively their progress is tracked. We want to know what sort of support they're receiving to foster ambition and ensure that they achieve their aspirations. And how well providers consider the well-being of learners. When we're in schools, we carry out a range of inspection activity to try to come to some ideas and conclusions on those matters. So we'll carry out learning walks and lesson observations. We'll look at planning and other documentary evidence provided by the school. We'll meet with learners to discuss their work, and we'll meet with teachers and leaders. The inspection team may discuss the provider's involvement in the SEREN network during the inspection, but it's not often that comments about the SEREN network are made in the report. A couple of weeks ago, I was on inspection and I had a conversation about the Brilliant Club, for example. And we've actually put that in the report, but whether that makes the edit or not is another matter. But certainly we've spoken about it. Okay. So when carrying out inspections, inspectors also have access to supplementary guidance, which is also available for you to see on our website. Our supplementary guidance for more able and talented learners was published at the same time as our new inspection framework was published in 2017. And it covers both schools and colleges. The prompts within that help inspectors to explore standards, provision and leadership, particularly where it's a very positive feature of the provider's work. So let's have a look at this in a bit more detail. So, inspection area 1 deals with standards. We ask, do more able and talented learners achieve what is expected from them from baseline and prior achievement and attainment information? Are the standards reached by more able and talented learners appropriate to their abilities? Do more able and talented learners reach certain progression steps more quickly than their peers? And what are the trends in performance at the higher grades in external examinations and higher than expected outcomes in any nationally collected or externally verified assessments? Now that would kind of suggest that we look only at the data, but we don't. So I think it's important I give you a bit more detail and background to that. 1.2 within Inspection Area 1 focuses specifically on the standards and progress of specific groups of learners. So it will focus on learners who are eligible for free school meals, learners with additional learning needs, those with English as an additional language, and also learners who are more able and talented. And we will consider how well learners with more developed academic and vocational skills achieve, and to the extent to which they undertake work that stretches and fully and allows them to fully achieve as they should. Now we do that in a number of different ways. We look at the provider's own tracking information to help us understand starting points and the progress that they make throughout their time with the provider. We also consider the rate of progress that these learners make in their lessons, and as demonstrated by the books that we see and the work that we review. So where learning and progress is strong, we find learners who are highly engaged, independent, they demonstrate highly advanced skills and confidence in their learning. Under Inspection Area 2, we consider learners' well-being and their attitudes to learning. So how do more able and talented learners feel about their physical, mental, and emotional well-being? One of the findings of our thematic survey, which I introduced at the beginning of the presentation, was that many learners enjoy the intellectual challenge of A-levels. They enjoy the sense of achievement, of learning independently, and they develop a sense of ambition regarding their grades. Anyone who has taught A-level will recognise pupils and learners who demonstrate or display those characteristics. However, it's not a walk in the park, and this is what they tell us. They say that they find studying A-levels challenging, and that's learners are all, in all areas of the ability range. And this is because they are seen as high tariff qualifications. They struggle sometimes with the 4 subjects and the Welsh back. And some of them also juggle all of that with commitments that they have for caring for other children or with part-time jobs. So it's important that schools and colleges consider how effectively learners become confident, independent and resilient learners that can manage their time and their commitments successfully, particularly when looking at those higher grades. We also consider what are the attitudes of learning of the more able and talented. Are they interested in their work? And how well do they engage in tasks? When inspectors evaluate attitudes to learning, they consider to what extent are learners developing their employability skills and the extent to which learners are ambitious, confident, capable and independent learners. How well do learners engage with new, unfamiliar experiences and ideas? Inspectors evaluate how well learners persevere and remain purposeful when they are faced with difficulties, or how well they seek other solutions when their first approach to a problem is unsuccessful. And they look at how well learners manage time effectively, how well they prioritize their tasks, and are able to work to deadlines. Inspection Area 3 deals with the quality of teaching and learning experiences. Before we look at this in a bit more detail, can I start by emphasizing, and I cannot emphasize this enough, we have no preferred approach. Please have a look at our myth-busting section on our website We don't expect a 3-part lesson or a 5-part lesson. We don't expect every lesson to start with a starter or end with a plenary, or for there to be assessment for learning in every lesson. What is really important is that we look at the impact of teaching on learners' progress. And that's the key message that you must take away from today. The key consideration is whether teaching is successful in engaging learners' interest and in developing their skills, knowledge, and understanding to an appropriately high level. So we ask, how well do teachers take account of learners' differing abilities and learning needs? That means, how well do they know the pupils and learners in front of them? Do they have high expectations of all learners and make sure that their sessions are stimulating and engaging places in which all groups of learners can learn productively? Do they challenge learners to achieve as well as they can? For example, through higher order questioning or lessons that provide clear progression. And I'm not talking here about what's written on a lesson plan. We're looking at how well activities are sequenced together to build and extend learning and knowledge in meaningful ways. So do teachers provide opportunities to develop higher order learning skills, problem solving and thinking skills in their planning and teaching? How effectively do teachers challenge more able learners to reach their potential? For example, the extension tasks do exactly that, and that teachers avoid approaches that rely on learners being required to do more of the same work, or low-level extension work such as puzzles and quizzes. And are teachers aware that issues such as disaffection may mask high ability, and that a learner's particular strengths can lie in unconventional areas of development? When looking at teaching and learning experiences, we don't just look at the quality of teaching and assessment, we also look at the provision that's available to learners. So we look at how well the school or college organises its provision for more able and talented learners. Is the curriculum and other provision flexible and challenging enough to meet the needs of more able and talented learners? For example, have they considered not just the more able, but also those who are talented in specific fields outside of the traditional more able categories? Does the school give enough attention to all groups of more able and talented learners, including those who are disadvantaged and have disabilities or come from minority ethnic backgrounds, or those who are eligible for free school meals? And does provision include enrichment and extension in class, as well as opportunities for out-of-school learning? Now, the slides don't provide any information on Inspection Area 4, but I thought I'd touch on Inspection Area 4 because this is quite important as well. So when looking at Inspection Area 4, which deals with tracking, 4.1 deals with tracking, monitoring, and the provision of learning support. And we are concerned, we do look at learners' well-being in Inspection Area 2, and the flip side of that is how providers support learners to achieve strong levels of well-being and strong attitudes to learning. So we'll look to see how well the college or the school uses tracking information to consider the progress and the development of specific groups. For example, those learners whose circumstances might make them vulnerable to underachievement, more able learners who have younger siblings to look after, for example. And how effectively the school supports learners in preparing for specialist application processes, such as UCAS or UKCAT, or Oxbridge applications. So we are concerned with learners' well-being too. Okay, Inspection Area 5. Inspection Area 5 considers leadership and management. What we want to know is whether the provider's policies support consistent and effective practice for more able and talented learners. Is the governing body involved in securing appropriate provision? Do they ask the right questions? For example, do they ask questions about the performance of groups of pupils? Are they aware of the performance of groups of pupils? Do they ask for reports on the quality of provision, and are they aware of the curricular provision available for those learners? Of particular importance is how well leaders monitor and evaluate the quality of their provision to ensure that all learners achieve as well as they can. We also consider whether schools have links with colleges, or whether colleges have links with schools and other organisations to further extend and enrich learners' experiences. And a further finding of our remit, our A-level remit that I introduced at the beginning of this presentation, was that teachers of particularly more able and talented learners don't necessarily always have access to the professional learning that they would like to help them, support them in their endeavours to support their learners to achieve to the best of their potential. So one of the questions we ask is whether there are suitable professional learning opportunities to help practitioners to develop their expertise, and whether learners have access to suitable resources. So a number of you said that you oversee sixth form provision or A-level provision in colleges. So I've listed a couple of questions that are quite standard that we might ask you. So they're a mixture of questions, so you might want to take some of these down. So we may want to know how well leaders understand their cohorts. For example, we might ask, how does the sixth form provision or the A-level provision cohort compare with the rest of the college or the school? What is the provider's vision for sixth form or A-level provision? What support do they provide pupils to access provision here or in other centres, particularly for disadvantaged learners? How do we ensure that there is sufficient breadth and maximum flexibility, particularly in relation to partnership arrangements? And what opportunities do these learners have to develop their leadership or entrepreneurial skills, or extend their subject skills? We might want to know the provider's view on how successful their provision is, and how well they use that information to drive improvement. So in our meetings with heads of sixth form or those who oversee A-level provision. And how well they address any underperformance in sixth form. And if you have any further questions around that, please feel free to ask me, and I'll share as much information as I'm able to. Okay, so that covers the 5 inspection areas. Finally, I'd like to direct you to some effective practice. We have here a good practice case study in preparing students for their next step after college. That piece of work covers case studies from St David's College, Catholic College, Iris High School, and a number of other places. We've also, there's a guide on using self-evaluation to challenge and nurture more able and talented pupils. And then, of course, there's a thematic review of A-levels in sixth forms and further education colleges. We've also published, and this may at first sight, you may not feel that it addresses you as an audience, but we've also published a thematic review with the title, Supporting More Able and Talented Pupils, How Best to Challenge and Nurture More Able and Talented Pupils in Key Stage 2 to Key Stage 4. Although the audience is Key Stage 2 to Key Stage 4, it was published in March of this year, and it contains a lot of very good points and pointers, which would be equally applicable to your learners in your context.